What's up, y'all? Today we're talking about 5 beginner tips. 5 things that hopefully will help save a little bit of time, make things a little bit easier for you as you're learning. A couple of things that I wish I had known when I was starting out, things I wish I'd done a little bit differently that hopefully you guys can avoid making the same mistakes that I am. Stick around, see if it does you some good. Tip number 1 is listen. If you ignore everything else in this video and listen to just this first tip, then you'll probably be doing some good. Please don't. I kind of need people to listen to the whole thing. It helps the YouTube stats and all that. But this is the most important thing. Listen to as much music as you possibly can. If you're playing tin whistle to try and learn traditional Irish music, well, one, hopefully you're in the right place, because that's the only thing I know how to do. So if you're trying to do other stuff, video game music, movies and TV theme songs, bluegrass, country, pop, whatever else you want to play, that's awesome, knock yourself out. You're probably not listening to the right guy because I don't know anything about any of that kind of stuff. But if you're working toward learning traditional Irish music, the best thing I can say is listen to as much of it as you possibly can. In the beginning, I think it's going to be a lot more useful if you're focusing on tin whistle and flute and uilleann pipes. Even if you're not playing flute or pipes, the physics of those two instruments is similar to the whistle as far as how the scales are laid out and what you physically do to make noise come out of the things. The concept is the same, as opposed to like a stringed instrument, where the whole thing is radically different. So focus, at least in the beginning, focus on tin whistle, flute players, pipers, and listen to as much as you can. If you find a tune that you like, especially if it's something that you want to learn, see if you can find other versions of it. I know I've mentioned this in previous videos before, but I think it'll help because you can get an idea of different styles that people are doing. You might find that maybe one person plays a particular variation on the A part, somebody else does something a little bit different on the B part, and you kind of like both, and you want to mix and combine your own version of that to play it your own way. Tip number 2, don't skip steps. And what I mean by that is there's a ton of fundamentals and stuff that you're really going to need, again, if you want to play traditional Irish music on the whistle or the flute. If you skip past some of the basic stuff, it's just going to mean you're going to have to come back and probably unlearn some mistakes. That's definitely a mistake that I made, is kind of just diving in and wanting to just start playing tunes as fast as possible without really getting a good concept of the fundamentals, both basic scales, ornaments, simple stuff like that, and making sure that those ornaments were clean and consistent. Sometimes when I was starting out, I could make it work a few times and it sounded pretty good, but then I'd be trying to jam these ornaments in there and it would just end up disrupting the melody. The cool thing is that now there's lots of places to learn fundamentals. There's plenty of folks teaching on YouTube. People are teaching Skype lessons. Mostly that's what I do is a lot of lessons by Skype, but I also always tell people, look around, see if there's some local folks who will teach in person, because you're probably going to get more value out of that. And if there are sessions, if there are groups that are playing, ask around there, because if any of them teach, they'll probably be happy to work with you. And again, it's always better to have somebody in person, so see if there's some decent options locally, wherever it is that you live. Okay, tip number 3 is kind of similar, but it's a little bit different, and that is don't try to do everything at once. Specifically, what I'm talking about is when you're learning a tune, don't try to pile every ornament that you can in there, work on variations, all that stuff. Get the melody down first. After you get used to playing for a while, those ornaments are just going to kind of drop into place without really having to think a lot about it. Again, that kind of gets back to those fundamentals and making sure you're doing the ornaments properly. But when you're learning a tune, you've kind of got enough on your plate. There's a lot of notes in Irish traditional music, so there's a lot of options for ornamentation, for variation. If you start trying to do all that right off the bat, you might end up kind of derailing yourself and really having a tough time learning the melody. So don't try to do it all right off the bat. Get the melody down, then go back and see what you can do with it. Have some fun with it. You kind of need that basic first before you can kind of go off the reservation and make a tune your own. So get the basics down first. Okay, number 4, try to learn by ear. I did a whole other video about learning by ear a while back. I can post a link up here if you want to see more details on that. There's nothing wrong with learning by sheet music inherently, and I'll still refer to it from time to time. But one, there's not going to be any sheet music at sessions. So you're eventually going to have to know these things by ear anyway, so you may as well get started doing it. 2, I've always found that if you're learning a tune from sheet music, if I have to learn a tune from sheet music, either it's an original tune or something I just don't know and I need it for a gig, it takes me a lot longer to get away from the sheet music and try to make it my own. So I find if you can pick it up by ear, it's just going to lock in a lot better and it can give you a little bit more flexibility to play it. So if sheet music helps, I'm not saying avoid that completely, but as you're learning, try to force yourself into learning more by ear, because I think it's going to be much better in the long run. You're going to have better recollection of these tunes, and I think you're going to be able to play them a little bit more interesting a lot faster. Okay, last tip, understand how this instrument works, right? It's very simple. It's pretty, pretty basic. There's not a lot working, but what I mean by that is understand the physics of it. Know the basic scales, how it works physically when the air goes in here, what makes the notes go higher, because that's going to make learning by ear a lot easier if you don't really have to make yourself think, okay, when I lift this finger, the pitch goes up. Those are kind of the instinctive type of things, basic stuff. And that's where the scales come in handy. I know those exercises are boring and they probably drive you nuts, but that's the kind of thing it's going to help with. Also, you want to make sure you can tune the thing properly. Because if you are going to be playing with other folks, or even if you're just playing with a video online, if you're out of tune, it's going to make it a little bit hard to work. So again, basic instrument knowledge. Any whistle, if it's built like this, can have the mouthpiece taken off. And that's how you tune it. If you pull the mouthpiece out, it's going to get flat. If you push it further in, it's going to go sharp. So tune to a tuner or to whoever you're playing with. Some folks have a more difficult time tuning than you will if you're playing the whistle. So again, basic instrument knowledge. If the instrument gets clogged up, if it gets jammed, which happens a lot, the easiest thing that I've found to do is to clear it is you just put your finger over the mouthpiece here and just blow until you make that sound. If you don't do that, it makes a horrible sound that is going to drive people crazy. So if you cover that, you can blow it out, clear it. It kind of works in a pinch and you're back to playing. I wouldn't worry too much about cleaning and polishing it. They need to look like they're played in my opinion. But keeping the wind wave free, knowing how to tune it, basic concepts. So make sure you get those down. So cool, 5 basic things there. Hopefully you guys are already doing a lot of this stuff. This probably won't come as a huge surprise to you, but if not, maybe it'll save you a little bit of time. So let me know what you think. If you guys have any other tips and suggestions, especially for folks just starting out, maybe some mistakes that you guys made that you want to save everybody the hassle of, by all means, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys think. And that's it. See y'all in the next one. Cheers. Okay, I lied. I got one more tip, one more thing, and I saved this to the end because it's a little bit controversial. So, if you disagree, fine, let me know in the comments. That's cool. Yell at me all you want. So last tip, number 6, consider the source. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you're learning traditional Irish music, depending on what part of the country you're from, depending on what recordings you're from, there's all sorts of different settings of tunes. Some of them are more or less legitimate than others. How do you know what tunes to learn? How do you know which versions of tunes to learn? Well, that's where I mean by consider the source. Understand where it is that you're getting your melody from. So right off the bat, I would say try not to learn tunes from modern bands because, this is the part that's going to be a bit controversial, but because they're not necessarily playing traditional Irish music. They may take traditional tunes, change the keys up, change the arrangements of them, completely alter the tunes. They may play a lot of modern tunes, a lot of stuff that the band members themselves wrote. Nothing wrong with that at all, and it sounds cool, but it's not traditional music, and if you learn those tunes from those bands, you're going to be the only one playing them. There's the caveat to that. If you like listening to groups like that, Lunasa, more modern soloist tunes, Flute, who else, Grada, any of the more modern bands, you like what they play, you want to learn it, you want to emulate that, cool. Just, again, be aware that nobody else is going to be playing with you. Now, that's not to say that sessions don't play any modern tunes. That's not the case. They do. In my session, there are probably two modern tunes they can play, newly written tunes, one of which a buddy of mine kind of brought to the session 20 years ago, one that I brought to the session about 10 years ago. Other than that, there's just not a ton of modern tunes. So if you like them, play them, but when you're learning them, I would steer clear of modern bands if your goal is to be playing with other folks in your area. Now, the other thing to keep in mind too, you're going to want to be aware of odd settings on the session.org if you're going through looking for sheet music. Again, I had a previous tip. Don't learn from sheet music, but we all refer to it from time to time. If you're learning directly from there, you never know who's posted that, you never know where their setting was. So a lot of times with the session.org stuff, you can actually find out where that version of the tune came from. And if it came from Joe Blow Weekend Warrior Band, or if it came from, say, Michael Coleman, you can weigh that and decide maybe this version is the one that I want to learn. Because odds are somebody's going to be playing that version of it if it's something from some legitimate setting like that. Now, the other side of the coin is that there are alternate but yet still legitimate settings of tunes. Here in Nashville, we play one that was a completely bizarre setting of it, but it came from a legitimate source, and that's how we ended up playing it. Nothing wrong with it, but those types of tunes may not be played at other sessions. They're perfectly legitimate. When people come here, they think, wow, that's a cool setting of it, but it's not what they would play at their session. So again, just something to keep in mind. Let me know what you think. If you disagree, blast away. Give me the thumbs down if you got to, but I'd rather talk about it. So let me know what you think about learning tunes from modern bands. Otherwise, catch y'all on the next one. Cheers, guys.